Since Doctor Who came back in 2005, there have been a host of episodes that have blended sci-fi with horror, and throughout Christopher Eccleston's to Ncuti Gatwa's run, they are my favourite part of the franchise. Blink aired in June 2007 and is no question the most popular and significant episode of the genre, but also generally one of the biggest episodes of the entire programme's universe. In 2009, it placed second as DWM's public voted favourite story of the show out of about 200 at that point, with only The Caves of Androzani beating it. I personally don't think it is quite at the top of Doctor Who for myself, but it is for sure up there. The episode was adapted by Stephen Moffat from a Ninth Doctor short story he wrote for the 2006 Doctor Who annual entitled What I Did on My Christmas Holidays by Sally Sparrow. It featured a character of the same name at 12 years old, discovering evidence of the Doctor's presence in her aunt's house while visiting. Several elements from this printed story would be carried over into this TV version, such as the writing under the wallpaper and the ontological paradox, or bootstrap paradox if you're the 12th Doctor, with the VHS tapes. The original plot thread was that a glitch has separated the Doctor and the TARDIS by 20 years, with him needing Sally's help to bring it back into the past for him. Stephen was inspired by seeing an angel statue in a graveyard during a family holiday, which reportedly disappeared a few days later, and a children's game called Statues, incorporating and combining elements into the television narrative here. It is very easy to see why there was hype about Moffat becoming the showrunner whenever it came to Matt Smith's run starting. He was very much known as a scary writer of Doctor Who, if I recall correctly, having penned The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, The Girl in the Fireplace, Blink, and The Silence in the Library and The Forest of the Dead. As great as these are, personally for me, Russell T Davies has championed them all with Midnight, Turn Left, my favourite episode of the entire modern era, and most likely The Waters of Mars. Moffat showed great capability with what had been previously presented, and arguably his crowning achievement of the show, a real fight between this and Heaven Sent going by the general consensus. Blink proves why Doctor Who doing horror can work so damn well with its central crux of time travel. Not only is this just simply one of the best episodes of the modern era, it is one of the most intelligently written. The whole plot articulate of the DVD Easter eggs and how the conversations that are had with them are so incredibly well written and planned out. Everything fits so well together and feels like it all has a purpose. It is perhaps complex, but so well oiled and refined, making for an extremely satisfying, complete narrative experience. The main character of Sally Sparrow, as played by Carey Mulligan, is a brilliantly written character and an engrossing protagonist with the well-realised journey of accepting what is happening and ultimately coming to terms with that she is the one that initiated the main narrative of the story. Her presentation of the folder of information to the Doctor at the end is one of the most important pieces of displaying how well written this episode is to me, and is just a beautiful scene to end on, both fully bringing to a close and opening character arcs in this episode. One of the major things I wanted to talk about within this review was the Weeping Angels themselves, one of the most influential and well done monsters, at least in their first episode. The more they have reappeared and been used again, there has been some worthwhile criticism of how things were done. The major one I would like to bring up here is their movement in Time of the Angels and Flesh and Stone. I do agree how this was done here does take away from some of the scare factor of the monsters. However, I want to point out that in one moment within Blink, you can see the shadow of one of their hands moving over Sally's hair during the scene where she finds the TARDIS key. Whereas this is obviously one of the creatures moving, I think the main intention of this was for Moffat to have another detail of the horror genre in this episode. Whereas how they returned and further developed is a mixed bag, they are still one of the most amazing creations in the show and also display a great sign of intellect, both in terms of themselves and the writing of the episode. I think one of the reasons why they have stuck around in popularity for so long is that it's something you may see every day but don't associate with being able to move, have life, or the potential to harm you, which I think is also perhaps one of the reasons why people find them so scary. It would appear that Moffat was aware of this with how the episode ends. At the end of it, Sally gives the Doctor the purple folder with the information he needs in it, in turn telling them about the rock being thrown and the writing under the wallpaper, an angel being the one that threw the rock. This in turn shows me that they know of Sally because they watched the Doctor doing this graffiti, subsequently learning that she is the one that can help lead them to the TARDIS, in turn leading to one of them holding the key to it that they nicked from the Doctor. They know how to get to the TARDIS, they just don't know where it is, and whenever they do eventually find it in the basement of the police station, they don't have the key anymore. There's also the point of how it is detailed that they don't always teleport you whenever you blink. As in the police station, whenever Sally is looking out of the window, she blinks and they swap sides. They may not be able to move whenever being observed, but they are fiercely intelligent and calculating as well as fast. They can choose to get rid of you if they want, but that is not always their objective. It is really amazing for me how this is a species that does not say a single word during this episode, but they are shown as having such a high IQ. Another thing I wanted to discuss is that this episode has aged very well, and in turn is pretty relevant within the horror genre, as there are two different things under this umbrella that have become more talked about that this episode also falls under. First is analog horror, which is a subgenre characterized by low fidelity graphics, little to no jump scares, and cryptic messages. Media of this kind tends to incorporate elements of analog technology, such as VHS tapes and analog television as well. I also wanted to mention within this the topic of ARGs, or augmented reality games. Basically, you would get a piece of media that is a part of some kind of game that leads you elsewhere online, or to a location in real life where there is the next part of it, clues and objects in a box, graffiti on a wall, etc. As mentioned before, my original plan for my 2026 return to videos on this channel did not go to plan, with this being the only survivor of this early stage. Two other things that I was going to review then were the A Ghost Story for Christmas episodes, The Mezzotint and Woman of Stone, with them acting with this as a quasi 3-part video. It is really interesting for me to bring these two productions into the fold of my thoughts, as all have very similar central plot parts. The Mezzotint has a painting that changes when you don't look at it, Woman of Stone has moving statues, and Blink combines both of those with a lot of ghost story elements, such as the big creepy house, spooky atmosphere, and creepy music and moments. It is like a connective triad that brings together two of my favourite TV shows of all time. Doctor Who Blink is overall a truly stunning and masterfully written episode of the show, and is one of the greatest examples of Doctor Who of all time.